Welcome to Love Your Family Again and Again and Again and Again, the podcast where we focus on parenting with love and clarity. I'm Dr. Marcie, a family culture expert who for over 20 years has been helping parents to create happy and strong families. I am so excited to be chatting with Mel today, to be talking about her family, because the questions that have already come up just in our correspondence to set up this podcast make me really excited to dive into, because I think when we talk about parent relationships, which is going to be the bulk of today's conversation, so much within a family shifts. So Mel, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
And I would love to just start with you sharing a bit about who your family is, who's in your family, and what it looks like.
We have two boys. My husband and I, Jacob, have two boys. Mickey, who is just turned 10 in May. He's about to finish fourth grade. And then JJ, who is about to turn 7 at the end of July, finishing up first grade. We are a on-the-go family. Like, we have a lot of activities. Our boys are very active. Mickey is on a travel soccer team, so that consumes a lot of our time. A lot of soccer practices, a lot of tournaments, a lot of games that are away. And then he's also in other school activities like band and chess. And then there's JJ, who just has endless energy. And so he does other activities like rock climbing and ninja training and karate and Lego class. So we have a lot going on all the time. Which seems to work most of the time with our family, but always there's schedules that have to be worked out. My husband and I both work from home full time now, so in that way, it's kind of nice that now that my husband's working from home, he can help out with some of the after school activities. But a lot of the time we have to say, oh, we have to be in two places at once. So it's a divide and conquer type of situation. And generally, I float towards JJ and being with JJ after school. And he floats towards Mickey. And I can see that over time that has affected our relationships, like mine with Mickey's and his with JJ, in not as positive of a way as I, had hoped for. It never really occurred to me that it was probably doing some damage, that I was spending more time with JJ and he was spending more time with Mickey. And it just, with the nature of things, it's just kind of gotten to be the point where it's like, like JJ doesn't listen to Jacob because like he's not an authoritative figure anymore in his mind. And, him being younger, it's, we kind of got to get that under wraps before he gets a little, too old. And with Mickey and me, it's like, while I'm his like go-to person for, when he's sick, he goes to me. I'm also the first person that he goes to fight with. So I'm trying to get advice on how to get back to all of us wanting to be with each other and not having, JJ say, no, I want mama to go, just because it's easier for him and it's easier for Jacob, or and vice versa with me and Mickey.
I love this question. How do we get back to all of us wanting to be together? Yes, let's dive into that. So my very first question, before we problem solve it not working, what is your go-to glitter? What are the things that you do have as a family that when you will make everybody happy? And that can be a small thing like Pizza Fridays. It can be a big thing like when we go on a trip. But what's the go-to glitter that kind of glues you back together?
I think that if we have time on the weekends, again, it's like usually pretty limited, but if we can find a half an hour where I can just say, hey, everyone just stop. Let's meet on the couch and play Mario Kart. The other thing that comes to mind is like, we'll play a game of Sorry. Like, we'll try to find some sort of game that we all enjoy that doesn't take up a ton of time. So we're not stressed about it. We can relax into it and just just kind of like just have fun, and like there's no point to it. It's just like we can forget about whatever else needs to happen and just have this fun. I mean, it definitely doesn't happen once a week, especially now towards the end of the school year. Everything's just getting, see this person, see that person, go to do that, year end things. So it does take a toll, I think, if we can't fit it in as well.
I would say maybe the first thing to consider is how do you make that a priority? And not a every day we have to do that, although I would love it if there was a game that you could play for 5 minutes every day. 5 minutes before dinner, we sit down and we play Spot It. 5 minutes before dinner, we sit down and we play 5 hands of Uno, right? Like 5 rounds. So it's not the whole game. We can't get to the end of who wins, but we can then, paper clip the cards together and put Post-its with each person's name on it and pick it back up tomorrow night.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So we often think of games. I mean, and you said it, like these games that are kind of short.
Yeah.
Monopoly can take 3 hours.
Yeah.
So you're not starting that game.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
taking other games that you do have, even if, a 20-minute game, sometimes you don't have that. But we can usually find 5 minutes if we're intentionally putting it there. And so is there a way to do, in my dream world, it'd be 5 minutes every day, but maybe it's 5 minutes twice a week.
Right.
Or 10 minutes on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Where you consciously say, we're going to build this in. We're going to make sure this happens so that it doesn't get lost, because those good times are part of what brings you back together.
Absolutely. And I noticed that when we played Sorry over the weekend, that like Mickey and I were like challenging each other. Like, he's like, "Oh, Mom, I'm gonna get you this time," and like like in a playful way. It was like, instead of, it was bringing back some of the like little like jokey inside joking type things that we had, when he was younger. So yeah, I agree. Like that's a really good way to like just forget about what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
If we could do that daily, oh my gosh. If we could daily forget about what needs to happen for 5 minutes, I think that would change everybody's attitude on life.
Yes, it would. And that is the magic of it, right? If you take 5 minutes a day to do something good as a family and brings you back together, it changes the other 23 hours and 55 minutes of it. It really, some of the way we resolve conflict is not actually about what we do in the moment of conflict, but what we do at the other times. So the other potential place to put this is if your kids have a hard time going to their bedrooms at night before bed, right? A lot of kids, when you're like, okay, it's time to brush your teeth and put on pajamas, they're like, I have a million things I have to do somewhere else in the house. But if it's brush your teeth, put on pajamas, and then we're going to go sit tonight in JJ's room, tomorrow in Mickey's room, and play 5 minutes of Sorry, then there's a reason to go get ready for bed, something good and connective that's happening. And then you're sending them off to dreamland as a family unit, which is a really beautiful way to end the day. And the truth is, bedtime always, no matter how tight your bedtime routine is, you can always find 5 minutes of bedtime, because there is an extra 5 minutes of running around or arguing or finding the pajamas or an extra glass of water. So fitting it in there is kind of organic. And if you're doing, so I know that I said with the cards to kind of paper clip it and put a post-it on whose pile is whose. If it's a board game, take a picture. So if you're playing Sorry, take your phone out, take a picture so you know where all the pieces are, because the board game will get bumped, right? Things will get shifted around. They cheated and moved it while we were sleeping. I have a picture, we'll just recreate it. I love the enthusiasm for just building in the good, because that is always my preference. But let's talk about what it really looks like when you have made a plan with your husband to divide and conquer, and then the kids decide that's not how we want it. I want mom, not dad. I want dad, not mom. No, 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 no. How does that unfold, and what do you end up doing?
I mean, most of the time we're just like tough kids. This is how it has to be. My job is pretty flexible. So I I don't have a lot of meetings, so I can normally like stop work earlier and then just pick it up later at night because it doesn't really matter. I don't my my hours are when I want them to be, which is great. It's why I stay at this job. My husband, Jacobs, is not as flexible, but he can still, if there's enough planning ahead of time, he can say, okay, I'll take off for this like hour. No one can schedule me for a meeting, so I can do this and that. But it just doesn't happen very often. Like, I mean, we're kind of set in our routine. Our family thrives on routine, but there are days that I'm like, hey, I did not get enough work hours in and I really need to get this thing in before this time. Can you just, and so he'll like step in. I think what has happened with JJ and Jacob at this point is that JJ just is like, okay, well, if fun dad shows up, then great. But if dad who doesn't have any patience, doesn't have like already is just like a little bit annoyed at the situation, then he'll just totally go the opposite direction. He'll just be like, well, I'm not even going to listen to you at all. And so then there's just already a conflict. And that happens so often at this point that it's like, that's their thing. And I'm like, well, that shouldn't be your thing. And then with Mickey and I, like if I'm with him after school, he's okay with it as long he's on this really big independence kick. And I keep telling him, hey, I want to give you all of the independence because that makes my job easier. Like if I can trust you to do things without me hovering or telling you or blah blah blah, like then I get to take a step back too. Like and that means we just get like we'll just come together for the fun stuff, like so as long as it's a time where I can be like, okay, yeah, you can go to the library and, just be home in time to do your chores before soccer. Great. But if it is a time where it's like, no, you can't go to the library because you chose not to do all your chores yesterday. So now you have all these chores and blah, blah, blah. Then it's an instant like, oh, you're so unfair. Dad never makes me do all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. It's just like, okay, but, so it kind of just depends, and obviously everyone has their days, their up days, their down days. I have days where I'm not as patient. Like kids have their days where they're just like angry for no reason, like we all have our days. But it seems like those days like go hand in hand with the opposite parent having to be in charge. So I'm like, is this a pattern or just a major coincidence type of thing?
Not a major coincidence. So you just said a whole bunch of things. So I want to kind of step back and go piece by piece through them because I have multiple ideas for you. So the first thing that really stood out from what you said is that you said that your family thrives on routine. I love that you know that you are aware of that you have a routine in your family because we all thrive on routine. Even those of us who don't like routines, like I do different things every day, but there are routines within that help me stay grounded and clear and able to do what I do. There is a routine when I record a podcast that allows this to actually happen. Without that, it's chaos. And none of us really want to be 100% in chaos all of the time. It doesn't feel good to our nervous system. So the fact that you know that is huge and wonderful. The second thing about that, though, that you said is you said that when something needs to change, you talk to your husband about it. And then sometimes the kids are okay and sometimes not. Here's what I wonder. How is it communicated to the kids that there is a change in schedule? And that might be part of where the breakdown happens. So you can talk to your husband and you guys have your shorthand and I need to get some work done or he has a meeting, so something needs to change. And you're like, okay, cool. And then the other parent just shows up to the kids.
Yeah.
And my guess is you just show up and expect them to roll with it, but have forgotten that all of those adult conversations that just happened were not with the kids.
Correct.
So the first step is to find a way to talk to the kids when there is a change.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess then we probably need to be a little more just plan ahead a little bit more, like look at on the weekend, like look at the week and be like, okay, where might we find times when something needs to change in the normal routine? And that way we can talk about it with the kids ahead of time, instead of being like on the day of being like, oh, you know what, like this is not going to happen, can you just, and then that's going to happen anyway because life, but it doesn't need to happen all the time that way. Like we can try to plan in advance a little bit more. I mean, I'm a planner, so I'm constantly looking at the several calendars that I have throughout the house. Reminding
Yes.
myself, okay, like this day, this day, this day, okay, this is my routine in my head. But just
Mm-hmm.
communicating more about it earlier in the week.
And communicating those routines out loud, right? So,
Yeah.
to the executive functioning teaching of our kids, you just said you look at all these calendars that are throughout the house and you're constantly in your head, okay, this is what's happening today. Okay, it's Tuesday, so this is going on. It's Wednesday, this is what's going on. It's Friday, this is what's going on. Start saying that out loud
Yeah.
so that your kids hear you, even if you're not talking to them. They'll be like,
Right.
why is mom talking to herself about soccer practice and making dinner and who cares? But they will hear that that is how you process to organize yourself. So they will start to learn how to process and organize for themselves as they grow up.
Ooh, I love that. I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yes. The other thing that I might recommend, given that you do love to plan and have all these calendars, is to do a Sunday night family meeting. What does the week look like? What's happening? Where might there be unexpected changes? Like my plan is that I'm going to pick you up, JJ, on Wednesday, but maybe that's going to change. We're not sure. And so if dad shows up at school to pick him up, do you talk to them and say, if the other parent is there, they're going to tell you why once you say hello. So once you say, hey, how are you? I know you were expecting mom. She got pulled into a really important project that she couldn't get up from her desk. So you have me today. That one sentence can make them go, oh, I understand. Because otherwise they're just like, well, where is mom? Did she not want to play with me? Did she have a play date with her friend and like them better? Is she hurt and can't come? Did she get sick? Like all of these questions when we don't know, that they don't realize are happening in their unconscious, but are there. And it's unsettling. So that can be part of what's unfolding for them. So if you do a meeting, but also just at that Sunday meeting, be like, remember, this is our plan. And sometimes plans change. So if there are unexpected things, we will explain it to you the best we can. So that gets that overt communication can be really powerful. Now, the one other piece around this routine is I would add in Mickey's independence. It sounds like when he pushes back and says, I want to do it myself, I want to go, you and or dad are saying, okay, sure, go as long as, and here's the contingency. What I wonder might work better is if you made a plan to build his independence so that you as the grown-ups were showing up and saying, you know what? I'm going to pick you up from school. Or once you pick them up from school saying, okay, now that we're here, I was thinking maybe you wanted to go to the library and I'm going to go home and get some stuff done. And then you'll come back at, 5, get your chores, and then we'll go to soccer. So that you're offering the independence, so that you are intentionally creating spaces where you're saying to him, I see you want this. Let's do it intentionally. That might be in a meeting with him and dad and you, where you're like, what are the things you want to work towards? Great, let's make a plan together so that it's not always incidental and on the fly. And then it can also be that you and dad both know what the plan is. You're going to have different expectations. And that's okay. So when he's like, well, dad doesn't make me do that. Okay, well, you're with me today, is a very quick answer to that, because we don't know what he's saying to dad. He might be like, well, mom doesn't make me do this. We don't know. And dad's answer should be like, cool, you're with me today. So it's not a competition between the two of you. It's not well, dad does it better or mom does it better. We're different people. We're going to hold different expectations. I'm asking you to do it this way. I've made a plan to build the independence for you that you're wanting. So it all comes from a good place.
Yeah, the different people holding different expectations. I've tried to always, Like I say that to them, like when they go to school and say, hey, I may let you do something differently on the playground than your teachers. Your teachers are in charge of you. So you have to do what they're comfortable with. Same with like at a parent's house, like their rules of their house are their rule. Like you get a jump on our couch because we buy a cheap couch because we know you're going to destroy it. They may not have done that. They may have a really nice couch that there's no jumping on. That's the rule. So like, we try to like instill that, but I guess when it comes to our like the different parents, we don't do that. You know what I mean? Like I'll be like, yeah, JJ, you want to climb to the top of that fence? Okay, I'll spot you. And my husband's like, why would you let him do that? That's so dangerous. I'm like, I don't know. He can do it. And I'm spotting him. It's fine. He's like, well, I don't feel comfortable doing that. I'm like, okay, so I'll let him know. You know,
And so it's the same thing that you do. I love that when you go to school, you're like, remember, your teachers are the one in charge, and it might be different than me. Or at a friend's house, this is not our house. So this parent may have a different expectation, and we have to honor that. Same thing when it's you and your husband. It's the same conversation. It just feels different because you think of yourselves as a family unit. And we have been like sold the story that parents have to align in everything. And that's not true. You have to align in the big things, right? The values you want to instill in your kids, the general bedtime, where you want to send your children to school, like the big things you have to align on. But if for you bedtime, if bedtime starts at 7:30 in your house and for you that means the kids are in bed falling asleep by 8 and your husband that's 8:15, that's fine. If it's 8 versus 9, that's a big difference if you're seeing a difference in their energy level the next day, but nuances are going to be different. So you being okay with JJ climbing to the top and your husband not, totally cool. The trick to that is that when you are all together as a family, the two grown-ups being clear on who is in charge. So that when JJ says, Mom, I want to go climb to this, and you say, cool, I'm going to spot you, that JJ doesn't hear your husband then say, I don't want him to do that. That's not okay. What are you thinking? Why are you letting him do that?
yeah.
And let me be clear, that happens on
That's
both sides.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
Yep.
Definitely.
It's we're going to the park. I'm going to keep my eye on JJ. You keep your eye on Mickey. So we're all cool. So that if JJ runs up to the top of the pole, your husband can think, oh my gosh, I would never let him do that. But your husband can also think, I love Mel. I know she's a good mom. And I trust that she has my kid's best interest in hand. And she's the one in charge of JJ. So I'm going to let that go. It's not my place to step in.
I think that is where we have a lot of work to do with, just like things at home. Like we tend to be more lenient with just different things. Like, I'll be like, yeah, you want to cut the fruit? Grab a knife. Go ahead. Like, you'll just be careful, and he'll say no to that. And so like when he's making supper and they want to help, he says no. And they're like, well, why? Because I can do it with her. But I'm, like with Mickey, I'm like, no, you have to do your chores before you do any fun. And he's like, well, why? When I'll get the chores done when I get them done within the time frame, why can't I have the fun first? And I'm just like, I don't know, because that's not how I was raised. You know what I mean? So like, we both have our places where it's like, where we don't align. And so it is kind of confusing for the kids, but I guess if we keep reiterating the different people hold different expectations, the different person in charge, whatever they're comfortable with at the time is what has to happen.
Yes.
And it may be disappointing at the time for you, but the next time it'll be a yes. Who knows? Like,
and to understand that it's not a disappointment. It's just, for them to recode it and you to recode it. I get that you want to do this, and this is me keeping you safe. This is me loving you. And it sounds like it's often when, if dad's making dinner, he doesn't want them using the sharp knife to cut it. When you're making dinner, you are. Great. Who's making dinner tonight? And so And so I would make that, again, more of that overt communication, right? So we go into the kitchen and it's like, okay, dad's like, all right, boys, it's you and me. We're making dinner. Mom's a sous chef tonight too. We're doing the thing. So then they know I'm not going to go grab the knife because dad never lets me cut because he doesn't. But if all four of you are in the kitchen and you're helping and dad's helping, they don't know where those lines are. So if you are clear with the kids of who's in charge when, they're going to be able to then code switch because kids can do that really well. The other piece of that is that they know that if they say, well, mom lets me do it, or well, dad lets me do it, it pushes your buttons. So you and your husband both need to get really comfortable with saying, I love that mom lets you do that. I'm not okay with that. So we're doing it this way. And then the final thing to consider is, does your partner do it in a way that you actually want to accept? Right? I heard you say, I want him to do his chores before he has fun because I was raised that way.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes that means I actually believe that's important and good and necessary. And I believe that we have to do the hard thing and then celebrate with the fun after.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're like, well, I was raised that way, so I just do it that way. And it becomes an unconscious routine that we don't really believe in.
Yeah. That we're
And
just like, well, that's just how it is, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
But if your son really is responsible, because what you also said is he's like, I will get it done in the time frame. If he really will put all his clothes in the hamper and clean up his room and whatever he needs to be getting done before he goes to bed, does it matter? And do we as the grownups need to create more space, and especially for Mickey, create more of that independence for him to choose?
Yeah. I love that this came up because I didn't even think about it, how that even just like between my husband and I, like when we were first like living together, how like after supper I like to get up, clean the kitchen up and be done and then sit down. Where he's like, I want to eat and then I want to go sit down and like digest and like just enjoy like being relaxed. And then a couple hours I'll go clean up and I'm just like, I mean, it has blown my mind that I'm just like, why would you want to do that? Don't you just want to relax then for the rest of the day? But that's just how he is. And I'm always just like, oh, procrastination. But really, like if it gets done in the time frame, then it doesn't matter when it happens. And so like that's an adjustment that I've tried to have. It doesn't always. Sometimes I'm just like, let me just do it. But
it's hard to
then
recognize that
Mickey, yeah.
there are so many ways to exist in the world. There are
Yeah.
so many ways to do any of these things. And it's not about being right or wrong. And
Right.
that's the big shift we have to get out of, that your husband's not wrong for his routine. As
No.
long as he's not piling up dishes and there are creatures living in your kitchen because there have been
Yeah.
dishes sitting there for a month.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
He just does it differently than you. So
Yes.
giving space for that to be okay and that to be just as right as you doing it right away also takes the heat out of the conversation.
Yes. Yes. And then I have to apply that then also to Mickey as he's becoming more independent and doing his thing. And,
Yeah.
like not just being like, okay, next up is this. And then going off and doing it. Like JJ is still like, okay, mom, what's my next task? Like, so that's I really love that you brought that up. Like,
And what I love doing with kids Mickey's age is running it as an experiment and saying that, like, okay, I hear that you want to go to the library till whenever, go to soccer, and then do your chores after. Let's run the experiment. If your chores get done by the time it's bedtime, cool. This can be our new standard. It's really hard for me because that's not how I do it, but I hear that you want to try it. So we're going to give it a try. If it works, awesome. If not, tomorrow we have to do it my way. So it's, and I would say all of that, because it lets him know that this isn't now the new standard. Now that you let him do it once, it's not the new thing. It teaches him how to earn responsibility. If you show me you can do it, I will let you do it. But you got to show me that. It also lets him know that you're growing alongside him.
Yes.
I'm uncomfortable with this, but I'm going to stretch and grow because you're growing and we both have to do this. So it's not just they have to learn, they have to change, they have to adopt, but I'm doing this with you. And that really creates that sense of community and family.
Also, it shows him that even as an adult, there are times where you have to get out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I mean, I saw that you had a podcast like just came out that was like getting kids out of their comfort zone. I haven't listened to it yet, but I was just like, oh yeah, you mean like try anything new that's not
Yep.
like, you know?
Yep.
And so like showing that, like modeling that behavior as an adult can also like help him develop that as
Because our
well.
kids do what we model for
Yes.
them, what we want them to do. They follow our lead. So if we show them us growing and stretching, they are more willing to grow and stretch. If we show them doing hard things, they are more likely to do hard things.
Yes.
The episode that you're talking about, just in case you're listening and want to go find it, is season 2, episode 8. And it's a great, I mean, there's a lot of that modeling and a lot of that partnering that we talk about in it. So there's one final piece that I want to make sure we address that you mentioned kind of in passing. And that was the energy dynamic between JJ and dad. And that if fun dad shows up, JJ's like, yes, I'm ready to hang with dad. And if crunchy dad, I'm going to use that word because that's the word I use when things are just hard. Crunchy dad shows up, JJ's like, I'm out. And I think that that's really human of him. And we forget that as parents, we need to lead. If you show up into a business meeting pissy and crunchy and angry at everyone, the client that you're trying to land is not going to say yes. If you walk into a business meeting with your employees or when you're trying to land a new client, we put on a little bit of a like, hey, let's do the thing because we're leading. It seems unfair that we have to do that in our home life. But when we have kids, sometimes, and I'm not saying all the time, you don't always have to pretend it's rosy, but we do have to show up for our kids. So, what's happening in your husband's world that he's showing up crunchy? And can he put that aside? Is there a big project at work? Is there something else stressful in the adult work that he can say, okay, that's really hard. Like, I got to go deal with taxes or house things or work things. I'm going to put that down. I'm going to let go of that for these 2 hours and I'm going to be with my son so I can show up and be excited to see him,
Yeah.
even though life is hard other places. And we do it in all other ways, but
Yeah.
often with our family, we don't put it down.
Yeah. Because the family is, I mean, they're the people that will always stay around no matter what.
And
So,
it's home, right? Like
yeah.
we're used to being like, I'm home, I can be as crunchy as we want.
Yes. Yes.
But it's important for us to discern, like, well, of course your son doesn't want to hang out with your husband when he's crunchy.
Yeah.
I don't want to hang out with me when I'm crunchy.
Yes.
Why would anybody else? And so, is there a way, because I'm guessing this happens for you too, for both of you to say, like, I'm going to get my son, whichever kiddo you're getting, or I'm going
Yeah.
to get both my kids, and I love them. And I'm really grateful that I can be in a place where I can go get them. So I'm going to show up for them.
Yeah.
I'm going to show up in this moment and do this. And if I'm having a hard day, I'm going to tell them that. So it's not about sugarcoating and pretending, but it's about putting your angst and your anger and your frustration in the right place and not taking it out. Like he can show up to his kids and be like, oh my gosh, JJ, I really need a hug from you. It's been a hard day, but I am so happy that I get to spend the next hour with you at the park because you are going to tell me a joke. Can you tell me a joke to make my heart a little lighter?
I love that. I tend to be the more positive person. Um, I mean, I've been with the kids from the beginning, so like I was always like with them in their lives, and I take joy in that. And not to say that he doesn't, but like I will always be like, okay, I've had a hard day and everything like that, but like I can just like I'm like whatever, I don't have to deal with that now. Um, he has a harder time with that, and especially if it's like now that we've built up so much like of the JJ's not going to listen. He doesn't even acknowledge that I'm in the room if you're in the room and things like that. Like those feelings. Um, it's harder to go into a thing and be like, yeah, this isn't going to sound like, just be like, this is going to be fun, so I see where he's having a hard time with that. But I do like what you said about the like vocalizing that, because I've talked to Mickey about that, because like he's kind of a keep it all together at school type of kid, doesn't want to show any like that he's having any hard times or anything like that at school, but then comes home and then like has massive meltdowns. And I'll tell him like, hey, if you had a hard day where you were keeping it together all day long, just come home and be like, Mom, I've kept it together all day, but I'm exhausted now. So can you have a little bit more patience with me? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Thank you for letting me know that. Now I know where you are, and now I know how I can like be there for you. So if he can show up and be like, hey, I've had a day, dude. I'm going to let go of that, but let's you and me have some fun. Can we start it right now? Like I think JJ would be receptive to that, because it just like lets everyone, it kind of like evens the playing field of like everyone now knows we're on the same page. We all know what's going on, and we can all act the way we need to act. So
Yes.
I love that. I'm going to star that on my notes.
And the other piece around that is that if the routine is already that there is crunchiness and the expectation is, well, like, he's not going to listen and this is going to be hard, and both of them are showing up with that energy.
Yeah.
Someone has to go first to change it, because it's not going to magically change.
Right.
It's not like one day it's just going to be good.
Right.
We actually have to work to change that relationship, like any relationship. And the truth is, as unfair as it may feel, we as the grown-ups need to get out of the way and make the first step.
Yeah.
We have to make the amends.
I agree.
So your husband has to decide if he wants this to change, right? And for you with your own version of these dynamics, if we want to make a change, we have to be willing to show up differently first, so that our kids can respond to us. And that might be showing up to JJ and saying, hey, it's been really hard between you and me lately. Can we go for a run around the block, just you and me, and be super silly together? I have a bunch of work stuff to do, but like, I want to fix this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we do that, kids are super receptive in all sorts of ways that we never expected.
Yes.
But we have to lead that.
Definitely.
And that energy dynamic is really powerful and important for us to remember.
Yeah. And I think, any little thing like that, even, it makes both of you feel good. And then it just builds from there,
Yes.
I mean, negativity will do the same thing. It will grow and grow and grow if you let it, but like, so will happiness. So like, try to shift that way.
Yep.
So
energy flows where focus goes.
Ooh.
So wherever you put your focus, that's where the energy is going to go. If you keep focusing on the negative dynamic in a relationship, that will build. If you put your energy on the positive aspects of a relationship, that will build.
Yes.
It's where you focus. Okay. So I want to know, because we've talked about so many different things. I want to know, what is your golden nugget? What is the one thing, as we kind of bring all of these thoughts and ideas together, one concept that you're like, I'm going to make sure that we go start putting this in place today?
Yeah. I would love to do the daily good times. And if it can't be daily, then at least, a larger chunk weekly. That I was just like, get the good times in daily. Because even if it's like, it means we read one less book to JJ, it just means that we also like grew together as a family for 5 minutes, so like that one for sure. And then just like, the more communication, like I think a lot of people, like a lot of world problems center around lack of communication. And so if we're, just like clear with the kids about who's in charge, the different people with the different expectations, and, and vocalizing our discomforts or our, like what we might need as we come into like, you know, when we pick them up, you know, and things like that. Just like making sure everyone knows all of this stuff because like we're not mind readers. So get it out there.
Yes. Yes. Because you're not mind readers and they're not mind readers. And in thinking about some of the things you've said, especially just at this end of you wanting Mickey to come home and tell you that he had a hard day, he kept it all together, and he needs you to give him a little more space and compassion.
Yeah.
The way he's going to learn that faster is if you model it for him, if dad models it for him, if this becomes part of how the family talks.
Yes.
So I love that. I love that those are your two golden nuggets. I love that the biggest one is that you're going to add the go-to glitter every day, because I think if just that, you will see so many different pieces shift and change and improve from that.
Yes, I do too. Joy begets joy.
Yes. This was so fun. This was so full of so many different tools and strategies that I'm really excited for you and your family and for the listeners. So thank you, Mel, for being here and being transparent and sharing about your family.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited to hear how it all unfolds for you.
Yes, thank you so much.
And thank you for listening. I know your time is precious and limited. I'm grateful that you shared it with us today. What's your one takeaway? Just one small step can make a big difference. Make sure you know when new episodes come out by subscribing here and joining my mailing list at drmarcie.com/podcast. Do you want to be a guest on a future episode of Love Your Family again and again and again and again? Then go to drmarcie.com/podcast guest and let me know. Finally, do you need individualized help for your family? Then go to drmarcie.com/contact and connect with my team to learn how we can help you. Remember, blue skies are ahead and we're going to get there together.